Yes, yes. Welcome into Balloon Party, driven by Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota here on 101 ESPN and on YouTube. Tim McKernan, Action Jackson with you on the program. Jackson, we got a lot of stuff here.
We're looking for bear.
We got the Cardinals and Cubs, the ejection of Miles Mikolas last night, the Doggies playing against Club America. The story that has captivated St. Louis, though, came from the Los Angeles Times yesterday afternoon, and it regarded the Cardinals, the Dodgers, and Nolan Arenado. And when news breaks, you know, Balloon Party is the place people tune in really across the country. And that is why we are very pleased to welcome to the program the author of the story from the Los Angeles Times. He has a tight window, so we want to get him on ASAP. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome to the program Jorge Castillo. Jorge, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
We are wonderful, and you and your story certainly got Cardinal fans and baseball fans across the country, and I would imagine plenty of Dodger fans talking yesterday, and that is that the Dodgers and Cardinals have had talks regarding Nolan Arenado. I certainly have a variety of questions regarding the story, which you can read at latimes.com, but the story was posted about 18 hours ago. What can you tell our listeners as an umbrella view of where this thing stands with the Cardinals and the Dodgers and Nolan Arenado?
Yeah, so basically what I've heard for several days now, and when I first heard it, I was like, no way. And then you keep hearing it, so you poke around, and basically they've had, the Dodgers have reached out. They've had talks. The Dodgers know what the Cardinals would want in this kind of scenario, and but the fact is, as I wrote in the story, that the Cardinals don't have to trade Nolan Arenado. He's under contract for a while. He remains, one of the best players in baseball. But the Dodgers have been enamored by him for years, going back to his Rockies days. They wanted him when he was about to be a free agent there before he signed his extension. They wanted him when he asked out of Colorado. Colorado did not want to trade him to Los Angeles. This has been for a long time. So as it stands right now, I was told yesterday, actually, that it seems that the Cardinals are, have sort of closed the door on this, but they did have talks. And the smoke was enough for me to decide, hey, I'm not much into the rumor mill stuff, if you guys have looked at my work, but this was percolating for a while here, the last several days. I don't think there's no chance it's going to happen, but obviously it's a slim chance.
And so just one of the things that I want to make sure focus on, because certainly Cardinal fans were shocked, and really I think the majority either didn't believe it or were really angry that the Cardinals could do it, and if they did, would be really angry. You think now, based on your understanding, that the Cardinals and Dodgers, you think the door has for the most part closed on any chance of this happening? Is that a correct way to read what you said there, Jorge?
I wouldn't say it's completely closed. I just believe, it's probably not going to happen at this point. But based on what I heard yesterday, again today, these things change so much, man. From day to day, it's but from now to Monday when the deadline comes, things can change quite a bit. But it does seem the doors might be closing. But again, that could change. And I'm sure last weekend is different than now, and Sunday can be different than today, which is what, Friday? I don't even know what day it is anymore.
Yes, so Friday, July 28th.
Yeah, things can change pretty quickly.
Jorge Castillo of the LA Times with us, and he has about 4 or 5 minutes before he has to tend to other responsibilities with the Dodgers. But I want to make sure I ask a couple of questions, because whether or not Nolan Arenado gets traded, as you acknowledge, it doesn't necessarily sound like it's likely at the moment. But with that said, I thought there were two pieces of news in your story, Jorge, that were incredibly important. One was that Nolan Arenado, per your sources, was not happy with what the Cardinals did this past offseason. And I can tell you that a lot of Cardinal fans were either confused or not happy with what the Cardinals did this offseason, leaving them vulnerable to a pitching problem, which has certainly played a role in the Cardinals' failures this year. So let's get into that, because On the surface, it would make no sense for the Cardinals focused on 2024 to trade a guy who they have under contract for 4 more years. But if Nolan Arenado is irritated with the Cardinals, like he became irritated with the Rockies, then we would have motive to explain why there could be a deal, which is an important part, because on the surface, it would make no sense. So what is your understanding of Nolan Arenado's mindset on the Cardinals in this past offseason and where he is right now?
I think Nolan Arenado looks at the situation and he wonders if he can win a World Series in St. Louis. He's 32 years old. He hasn't won a playoff series yet in his career. He hasn't played on a winner. He hasn't gone deep into the playoffs yet. And I think he's someone who probably looks at where he stands. He looks at his peers and he probably says, "Hey, I want to play in October." And the Cardinals will not be playing in October this year. So next year he's going to be 33 years old, and he probably looks around, and there's a lot of young talent there in St. Louis. Jordan Walker, Mason Wynn coming on up. But I think he looks at the situation and wonders if he can go somewhere else and win, still in the tail end of his prime.
And the other piece of news you had, and then Arenado's agent said that this was not accurate, but that's part of the deal when you break stories and you report things like this around the trade deadline, as you have people questioning the reports or saying that they're not true. It's just kind of the nature of what you do for a living, is that he would accept a trade to the Dodgers and only the Dodgers. Can you elaborate on that, Jorge?
From 2 different people, and last night I actually heard from a different team that was interested in Arenado, who also were under the impression that he would only accept the trade to the Dodgers and that he did not want to go to their team. So I'm sticking by that one.
Okay. And finally, you mentioned Jordan Montgomery and Jack Flaherty. They are still out there. You saw what the Angels did in the Los Angeles market 48 hours ago with Giolito and Lopez. The Dodgers have already made a move, bringing back Kike Hernandez. What do you think the interest level is on the Dodgers' part if Arenado is not part of a deal, but to do a deal with the Cardinals for either or both Montgomery and Jack Flaherty?
The Dodgers need a starting pitcher or two. I'm not sure how much you guys know what's going on with their rotation right now.
It's a mess.
Clayton Kershaw's been out for a few weeks. Kind of a mysterious shoulder injury. They haven't talked much about it. Tony Gonsolin hasn't been himself. Julio Urias has not been himself this year. They have a lot of rookies in there. They've had guys cycling in and out. They don't really have that, the usual Dodgers starting rotation that we're so accustomed to over the last, decade or so, right? So I do think one thing I think I'm pretty sure is going to happen is the Dodgers will acquire a starting pitcher by Monday. Now, the question is who? Jack Flaherty, someone I heard they do have interest in. Jordan Montgomery as well. There are other guys around. Mitch Keller is another name that's been tossed around. Lance Lynn is another name that's been tossed around. I do think the Dodgers will acquire a starting pitcher. Maybe it's one of the guys or both, as you mentioned, in St. Louis. I just expect something to happen, whether it's Arenado and one of those guys or someone else on another team or just one of those guys.
And finally, who do you think the Cardinals would be interested in? I know in your column you mentioned a number of names. If it were Flaherty, Montgomery, what do you think the Dodgers would be willing to give up? Because it certainly wouldn't be the haul if Arenado is not a part of that deal. Yeah,
I think the Dodgers have guys, man. They have a lot of young pitching that I think would be attractive to the Cardinals. Michael Grove, Ryan Pepio, Emmett Sheehan, guys that have had experience in the big leagues. Diego Cartaya is in AAA right now. He's a top 100 prospect, a catcher. They have a lot of guys who I think a lot of scouts, a lot of executives, a lot of teams in baseball think very highly of. The Dodgers system, while the Dodgers have been a very good Major League Baseball team, a great team over the last decade, their minor league system has been well stocked, better than most. So I think the Cardinals will have will have a lot to pick from there if they were to go just the Montgomery or the Flaherty route.
Jorge Castillo, the story at LATimes.com. It certainly has gotten quite a bit of attention around baseball fans around the country and has been the talk of the town in St. Louis. Jorge, the author of the story, standing by the report that Arenado would only go to the Dodgers if he were to waive his no-trade clause, but acknowledging that things can change quickly, but at this moment it doesn't necessarily look likely that the deal would get done. Jorge, I know you're very busy this morning, so thank you for fitting us into your schedule. We appreciate your time.
Hey, no problem, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thanks, Jorge Castillo of the Los Angeles Times. The story up at LATimes.com. Jackson, I tweeted this link out yesterday, and as I said, I'm essentially retired from social media minus the LSU mom.
Get the get.
Nice, thank you. At the White House, I didn't realize that at that point that the story had just gone up, and so then I'm in a lot of the mentions, which is something.
Right, you live your life to soak in the mentions.
I live my life for likes, actually.
Right. Everything you do is for likes.
Right, like. Look at me, and then I do this duck lip thing in my Mercedes, but it's not really mine. I'm just on a lot.
Right.
And then I just go to Napoli. But I also live for mentions. Mm-hmm. And then being attacked for sending out a link of a story.
That's right.
Because I'm like, yeah, I needed that.
Right.
And what I noticed about this was it was just being called essentially a phrase over the last 7 or 8 years, fake news. And then Derek Gould says, here are some quotes, and this is what the Cardinals are saying. And Derek says, and so what I've noticed is this. We believe the things we want to believe. We believe the things we want to believe.
Ain't that the truth?
It's quite a business model.
Yeah.
So I don't know why this gentleman who worked for the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times and went to Yale was in the mood to just make something up yesterday, but apparently some are of the opinion that that's what he was doing. So I wanted to have him on. Tip of the cap to you for getting him on. And I wanted to be able to ask him direct questions. And Arenado's agent said this thing about him only accepting a trade to the Dodgers is not true. So you just heard. He goes, not only do I stand by that, but I talked with another person, and their team was interested in bringing him on board, and he was told he's only accepting a trade to the Dodgers. So listen, I don't know what is true, but I can tell you the part that to me, and I know we were talking about this on TMA this morning, that is perhaps the most important part of the story is the following, because then it would give you motive. Because otherwise, why in the world would the Cardinals trade Nolan Arenado, who they have under control for the next 4 years? And it's this. Nolan Arenado not being happy with what the Cardinals did this past offseason, according to a person with knowledge of the situation. We've seen Nolan Arenado not be happy with an organization's direction before.
Right.
It was in Denver. It led to Austin Gomber going to Denver and the Cardinals getting Nolan Arenado and money.
Yeah, lots of money.
One of the strangest things I've seen. But either way, it worked out for the Cardinals. So if he is not happy, which would certainly be understandable. Yep. We've spent some time on this show on TMA. I would imagine it's been discussed at length all over St. Louis. Okay, you have John Mozeliak fly out to your place in Southern California and ask for the direction of the organization in the short term, deciding whether or not to opt out of your contract, which you have a right to do.
Yep.
You hear what he has to say. You decide not to opt out because you believe in the direction of the organization. The organization then signs a catcher who 5 weeks into the season becomes a corner outfielder / DH and is, per Michael Kay of the Yankees broadcast team, calling pitches that are not in the repertoires of the staff.
The old screwball.
And then you don't have any other pitchers, and your bullpen is decimated, your starting staff is decimated, in your last place. Perhaps, as Jorge just said, you're not necessarily happy with things because you may have felt like you were misled. I personally believe the Cardinal plan was to acquire Sean Murphy and spend money on pitching. I don't know who the pitcher would have been, but I really personally believe that that was the plan. And then when they didn't want to trade these prospects, some of whom they might be trading here at the deadline, for Murphy, they then pivoted, and the dollars were not spent on pitching, but on an overpayment of Wilson Contreras. And so Arenado may be even more unhappy now, or he may have been fine during the offseason, and then as he saw things play out in the Cardinal clubhouse and on the field, became disenfranchised.
Sure.
So the reason why I'm focusing on that is otherwise it would make no sense for the Cardinals and Dodgers to seriously entertain this, if indeed that's even happening. From the Cardinal side, it would make no sense whatsoever if you want to be competitive in 2024 to trade away Nolan Arenado, unless you're saying we're not going to be able to compete unless we bring in some young pitching that we have cost controlled and can strike guys out and can make guys swing and miss, because we just don't have that. The pitch to contact thing is outdated. And so the Cardinals say, okay, he's not happy here. He wants to go, but he's not going to say it publicly. And then that would be the reason. To me, that part of the story is important because it explains motive. I suppose it's titillating if you have an unhappy superstar, but it is important to the story because it explains the why. Yeah. So that is why I wanted to highlight that and get Jorge Castillo's perspective on it. And you just heard what he had to say. And if you missed any of it, you can podcast it on the Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers podcast. So we'll continue that. I want to hear what you have to say about it. Text in Air Comfort Service text line 314-399-9646. You just heard the author of the story that has many baseball fans in St. Louis talking. So we'll read your feedback. We'll listen to it if you want to leave a mic drop on 101 ESPN's app. We also had Mikolas getting tossed last night. You will hear two different broadcast opinions, as the Cubs broadcast was certainly different than the Cardinals broadcast as that played out. And we'll hear what Mikolas had to say about those developments as well. You are listening to Balloon Party on 101 ESPN. It's presented by Munganess St. Louis Acura and Alton Toyota. Munganess St. Louis Acura and Alton Toyota, the presenting sponsor of Balloon Party and also the place I go to get my cars, my family's cars, get our cars serviced. It's Munganess St. Louis Acura and Alton Toyota, and you can go shopping right now at stlouisacura.com or altontoyota.com. And even if you did not get your car from Munganess, you can get your car serviced at Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. And you can text or call the secret number for our listeners, 314-252-0029. And you can talk with Jamie Burkhardt, Clayton Patterson, or Peter Munganess and ask any questions or make any requests you may have of Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. We have had a number of relationships with advertisers over the years on TMA, and one of our best partnerships has certainly been with Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. First-class operation through and through, and if you are looking for a new or pre-owned car or just to get your car serviced, I can't recommend a place higher than Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. Welcome back. Balloon Party 101 ESPN and on YouTube. Tim McKernan, Action Jackson with you, joined by Jorge Castillo. In the first segment, he is the author of the LA Times story that certainly got St. Louisans talking yesterday. I was listening to Anthony Stalter and Jamie Rivers talking about it, along with Marshy Marsh and his playful posse. Jackson, what did you think of the story, and what did you think, as we just heard from the author of the story? What stands out to you?
Yeah, again, I think we could speculate all day long, and I think it's warranted speculation that Arenado was not happy with what happened in the offseason. I kind of agree with you on the point where it's like maybe he was happy in the offseason, or at least optimistic, and then once he saw the writing on the wall, once the season started, it clearly became a shift in mood. And to see a source attributed to that, or attached to it, certainly is eye-opening, or at least noteworthy from the perspective of, a Southern California guy who's in the latter half of his career. It's not surprising that, and then, maybe making a move to a team like the Dodgers, where he's from, wouldn't be out of the question. So I get the validity of the article, and I just think seeing that is like kind of confirming what we've been thinking this entire season to an extent.
I would really be taken aback if they traded Nolan Arenado.
I would agree.
Nolan Arenado and Jordan Walker and Wynn.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody else I would be taken aback by at this point, honestly.
No.
And to be clear, I think you trade Paul Goldschmidt. I really do. But if you believe that you can get back in the mix in 2024, and only you know what you're planning on doing and what financial flexibility you have to do so, then I understand. Then you want to maximize the 1 year you have left with him, kind of like what we're seeing in Southern California, not with the Dodgers, but with the Angels, with the couple of months they have left with Shohei Ohtani, who certainly showed his support for their move yesterday by becoming the first guy ever to pitch a one-hit shutout and then hit 2 home runs in the same day, albeit different games, as the Angels, who I think would be a nice little value play right now, as they're certainly fired up in Anaheim with doing that. So if the Cardinals feel like they can do that, then great. Outstanding. But he's going to be 36 in a month, and he's under contract for 1 more year. It makes all the sense in the world to me to trade Paul Goldschmidt. Paul Goldschmidt and the Dodgers aren't a fit. They've got themselves a lovely first baseman. The question mark they have is at third base. I also wonder, I realize, there isn't a cap, but there is the luxury tax threshold. And if the Dodgers already have the roster they have with the players they have already under contract, and then you add Arenado, and then you go after Ohtani, the hell's the payroll going to be? Like $500 million?
Well,
for real?
Well, the Rockies still owe about $16 million on that Arenado
the Rockies
contract.
are just bankrolling things. The Rockies are like the sugar daddy of the National League.
They are. Yeah, I think there's a vast difference in trading Goldschmidt and trading Arenado. I think there's
could not agree with you more, but I think both would be met with a lot of disdain in St. Louis because it's not something we've seen, and not a generation hasn't seen it. Your generation hasn't seen that.
Never.
The expectation, of course, is that Flaherty, Montgomery, Hicks, possibly Helsley, an outfielder or two, a middle infielder, would be going here between now and 5 p.m. on August 1st. But you go Arenado, that's a totally different thing. And that is why I just want to continue to focus on, because, listen, on the surface, I go, what? That's just makes no sense, so it can't be true. But if what Jorge Castillo reports, and he cited the reasoning for it, that Arenado is unhappy with the Cardinals and what happened this offseason, and he wants to win a World Series, he is going to be 33 years old, that you go, okay, well, then if that's the case, then maybe he wants out. Right. And that would explain it. I still wouldn't consider it to be likely. Your thoughts are welcome, and you are welcome to text in 314-399-9646. Lisa, what do you say about Lisa?
She's a gem, Tim.
What the hell is going on? Tim, how did our team get here? Mo needs to go. If the DeWitts are done winning, then sell. That is from Lisa, who is a gem. Well, that is why the next 4 or 5 days, I mean, this is a moment. Yeah. I never would have thought that we would see what we saw in January with the Blues, followed by July with the Cardinals. To have both teams have the expectations. Granted, I think the Blues were less than the Cardinals with respect to expectations, but still, postseason was certainly in play. And the Cardinals, I think it was the National League Central was in play. With both teams in not only sell mode, but fire sale mode. What a time. And then you have the first place.
Yeah, so I'm saying, like, if you were to, like...
expansion team.
Right, like, rank before the season started who would have the best seasons out of the three, you would have probably gone Cardinals, Blues, Dogs, and in fact, it's the exact inverse.
Yeah.
Because you look at the expectation with the Cardinals. Obviously, the Cardinals and Blues will have the same fate, but the Cardinals
This has been going on from the beginning. This has been going on from April. And the thing with the Cardinals is this was what was being discussed going into the season. What is going to happen with the pitching staff?
Right.
And then when something is called out by the fans in advance and it plays out that way, that is even more damning. 314-399-9646 is how you can text into the show. You can leave a mic drop via the 101 ESPN app. Tim, what about Wilson Contreras to the D-backs for a pitching prospect and we pay half his salary? That's in the 636. I just cannot imagine the Cardinals paying half that salary. Can't imagine that. I would think that if that is going to happen, which for the record I've got it 20 to 25%, if that is going to happen, and by that I mean Wilson Contreras being traded, if that is going to happen, the Cardinals would have to certainly eat some salary, not that level, but include a prospect or a player the organization would want, as in the organization receiving Contreras. That's the way that gets done if that were to happen. Let's see. Please don't lose sight that he isn't asking out. He just said he would play for the Dodgers if the Cardinals wanted to trade him. It's where he lives and an isolated circumstance or desire. Well, we don't know what he said. So the responsibility I personally feel I have is to just give you as much factual information, which is acknowledging what is factual and what is not, and then also giving my opinion on what is factual and not necessarily what I like or dislike. And what I found yesterday was, well, I don't like this news, so therefore I don't believe it. This is clickbait. And I thought, oh, this is kind of what's gone on in the United States over the last decade or so, is if you don't like the news, you just call it fake, and then you accuse or attack the author. And then if you do like the news, you say, see, this is the person who tells the truth.
Right.
And that's what we had play out with a baseball trade yesterday. Mo did not live up to his word. Players as well as fans don't like when someone goes back on their word. That is from the 636. It says Janet in parentheses, maybe.
Nice. We'll confirm that later. Yeah, I get what Janet maybe is saying, and then it also doesn't help when, I guess by definition, he did increase the payroll of the Cardinals by a marginal amount, and then says, "See, we did." Like, that is not going to be endearing to, especially given where the team is currently at. So I get people's frustration with it. But then I would totally agree. Like, if either Arenado, especially Arenado, but if Goldschmidt gets moved, people will be upset. And if you have a deal with Arenado, I've said this on TMA today, like, you got Arenado for one of the best deals in modern baseball history, and you don't get a single playoff win with him, that is really bad. Like, that's really bad, especially given the division they're in. This is no good. All
right. Also last night, the Cardinals and Cubs had a game in which all hell broke loose in the first inning. We will play the audio of Miles Mikolas getting tossed, both the Cubs version and the Cardinal version, and you will be able to assess your thoughts because Chip Carey and Brad Thompson did not hold back.
Nope.
I enjoyed it.
I did too.
We'll have that for you on the other side of the break. You are listening to Balloon Party, driven by Munganess, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota on 101 ESPN.
This is Action Jackson with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals lose last night, 10-3, the final score against the Chicago Cubs. They take on the Cubs again tonight. 7:15 is the first pitch. And Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow was carted off the field during Thursday's practice with an injury to his right calf. Coach Zach Taylor told reporters. That was in their Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Well, you're right, Jackson. There is a lot of activity on the social media. You know, the Twitter tweets, or are you calling it X now?
I'm still going to call it Twitter, probably.
Fair enough. The Twitter account, STL Sports Central, tweeted out, as the trade deadline moves closer and closer, we now have more insight into how the Cardinals will approach it, all via John Denton. The club is becoming concerned about Ryan Helsley's history of arm injuries and his lingering unhappiness over losing his arbitration case, and will likely try to trade the former All-Star in the coming days or offseason. Ryan Helsley quote tweeted that tweet and said, "Weird, I never knew I felt this way."
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah, he just tweeted 15 minutes ago. "Weird. Never knew I thought this."
Yeah, it's tough. Listen, I mean...
What's tough? You tell me what's tough. You're a prince. You're a Ledoux prince.
Right. Well, I mean, if someone, a source that you trust tells you something, and then you go and you report it, and then the player can say whatever they want and not humiliate you, that's the wrong word, but kind of dunk on you in that sense. That's just the nature of the business. That's why you and I don't break stories. It's because we don't want to. We don't want the stress of it. Personally, I know I don't. Unless it's like a big hockey trade, then you might see me.
Then
I have a lot of sources.
You and...
Yeah, listen, people give me the information, and it's my job to give it out to them.
You're the one who's breaking these stories now.
I don't want to come out and just say that, but I think people know.
I had no idea.
Yeah, this is all a ruse, you know.
We have deep teased this audio last night. Miles Mikolas on the mound when Wilson Contreras gets hit by Ian Happ in an aggressive follow-through. I think most would agree that it was not intentional. And here's a listen to the Cubs broadcast after Mikolas then throws high and tight on Happ, and then the next pitch hits him in his backside.
Mikolas goes inside with one at 94.
Intent? Probably not, but maybe. Definitely. Wow, that's weak. That's some weak sauce there. That's really weak. I mean, there's nothing intentional about what Ian did. Wilson took no umbrage. You saw him hug. And that's just dumb, really.
I mean, to me, I feel like I'm not advocating, but if they were to throw him out of the game here,
yeah,
I would say that.
Yeah, that might be what they're discussing. That was clearly intentional.
Clearly intentional.
Maybe that's a guy who doesn't want to pitch on a hot night. He's gone.
They threw him out.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know how Miles Mikolas thinks he's got an argument, and I'm sure Ali Marmol's going to stick up for his guy.
Yeah, and this is one of the things as a manager, you know your guy's made a dumb mistake, and guys sometimes in the heat of battle do dumb things.
3 batters in, and their starting battery is gone.
So there's the Cubs broadcast. Here is the Cardinal broadcast. Chip Carey, Brad Thompson.
And another message sent. Buzzed the tower once. Got him flush the second time. And now let's see if the umpires issue warnings after Happ knocked Contreras from the game.
Well, you see that Happ knew exactly what was going on, too. Didn't say a word, took his bag, caught him right in the hip. If you're going to get him, that's exactly where you get him. Did the job the right way. They're going to talk it over. They'll issue warnings.
They throw him out? Wow, they've just thrown Mikolas out of the game. You got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. Have a little feel for baseball. Have a little feel for the game.
I really enjoyed that. Now, here is my opinion. Number one, this is I was speaking. You know, one of the things that gets me going on this program, Jackson, media.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And so here you have two broadcast teams seeing the exact same thing, and then you heard the way it was presented.
Right.
So you have that. I enjoy the candor. The other thing I would say is the vast majority of you have probably heard Chip Carey and Brad Thompson call games this year. And while I'm sure any Major League broadcast and the home teams have their home team slant, which is why Joe Buck did not necessarily enjoy the feedback he received during October, because it's a totally different style of broadcast fans are used to at the most intense time of the year watching a baseball game, because they're used to hearing their hometown broadcasters. It's not like Chip Carey and Brad Thompson are pissing and moaning about umpires all the time.
Right.
I think there are some local broadcasts that do that. But I do not feel like that's the case with the Cardinal broadcast. Is it Cardinal slanted? Yes. But is the Cubs broadcast Cubs slanted? Yes. Is it across the baseball? Yes. My point being, they're not the boy who cried wolf. There's some credibility there. Brad Thompson, to react like that, I don't know if I've ever heard him react like that to something like that. My read is he thought, okay, issue the warning and then go.
Right.
And that's where I am. At the same time, the rule is if the umpires believe there's intent, then you toss them. I just think that at that point, first off, I think Mikolas throwing at him was just ridiculous. I have no idea what the point of that was. I mean, if you're doing that, what do you Ian Happ swung and hit Contreras intentionally, former teammate, friend or not, it doesn't really matter. I mean, that's such a ridiculous premise to take. And so now you're going to throw it. Well, you missed the first time. I mean, that's the problem.
Right.
Had he hit him with the first one, I guarantee you there's a warning.
Yes.
The problem is it happened twice and he missed him with the first one. Still, with that said, having, as Thompson said, have a feel for the game.
Right.
And it's the first inning. And it's like, okay, enough of the nonsense. That's a warning. Enough.
Right.
And I believe everybody would have been fine with that.
Absolutely.
Now, what got the Cubs and Cardinal benches going, my belief is, the Cubs were yelling at Mikolas because he missed him with the first one, and they were giving him trouble about that. Then Mikolas fires back at Stroman, who's got the same height situation I've got going on, and then is mocking his height. Flaherty gets involved, and they're screaming at each other. So you had that going on as well. What sound do we have following the Cardinals and Cubs fun and games? Here's Miles Mikolas.
Yeah, Miles Mikolas.
I threw a pitch inside, it got him, and, he was just going to take his base. There was no chirping or anything between sides. He was going to take his base, and I was waiting on the next ball, go get the next hitter, and, they had a meeting and decided to toss me.
If there was intent, and they mentioned the previous pitch, right, would you think a warning would have been issued at that point?
Yeah, if I could trade this guy before my locker, I threw inside to a lot of guys. I threw an inside and it hit him, and, there was no warning, and, the umpires couldn't believe whatever they want to believe. They had a meeting, and, that was their choice. They believe that that there was intent there, and that was, that's all the reasoning umpires need. Everyone's entitled to, see what happens and make their own decisions, and have their own opinions, and that was theirs.
There it is. The scouting report said you're throwing.
Listen, it's really tough to tell intent on stuff when you're not in the person's mind, but you give away the intent when you miss with the first one. That is evident that you are kind of going inside. So when you go inside again, now intent has been laid out. And if it is in the rules, if the umpires believe that it was intentional, then they toss you without warning.
So the Cubs are now on a heater at 500. And the reason why that is relevant is because with the Cardinals having to go to their bullpen in Dakota Hudson in the first inning and a 4-game series, that's incredibly advantageous for the remainder of the weekend with the conditions being what they're being. It's going to be hotter than hell. And the Cardinals had to tap into the bullpen early by Miles Mikolas getting to throw a handful of pitches before he gets ejected. I also think the context of what took place last Friday at Wrigley Field with Ron Kulpa and the Burleson at bat, even though he wasn't the one behind home plate last night, is still lingering for the Cardinals, considering it was the same opponent when that took place. What did you think? Did you think the ejection was warranted? What did you think of Mikolas' actions? 314-399-9646 Air Comfort Service text line. Plus, we have the Lil Piddles Friday six-shooter. It's all coming your way in the final segment here on Balloon Party, driven by Mug and St. Louis Acura and Alton Toyota on 101 ESPN.
It's Action Jackson here to talk to you about Circa Sportsbook. Circa Sportsbook has $14 million in guaranteed prizes for their two major contests. That's right, $14 million in prizes. First up, the Circa Millions, $6 million in guaranteed prizes, $1,000 per entry, maximum of 5 entries per person. You must register in person at Circa Sportsbook in Nevada, Las Vegas, Henderson, or the Sparks and Reno location. Pick 5 teams against the spread every week, and winner takes home $1 million. There are quarterly and season-long prizes as well. They also have the Circa Survivor Pool, $8,000 guaranteed to the winners, $1,000 per entry with a maximum of 10 entries per person. You pick one team straight up every week to win. If the team loses or ties, the entry is eliminated. You can only pick each team once in a season. You go 20-0 or be the last person standing to win. Again, $8 million guaranteed to the winner or winners. This is all available over at Circa Sportsbook. You must register in person at Circa Sportsbook in Nevada. Weekly picks can be made through a proxy that you register with from anywhere. That's Circa Sportsbook.
Currency. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lil Piddles Friday six-shooter presented by Angry Beaver on a program sponsored by Munganaz, St. Louis Acura, and Alton Toyota. When advertisers want return on investment, they come to a 1-hour midday show. That's what they do.
Yeah, a midday show that flat breaks it down.
Thank you. With this 6-shooter. Sir, the floor is yours.
So with the 6-shooter today, I'm going to go a little bit more. I'll do a Cardinal question and a non-Cardinal question given the time we have. It seems like with so many teams in the mix to make the playoffs, do you think that is a good thing for the Cardinals looking at the return they will get for some of their important pieces? In that sense, do you think it is beneficial for the Cardinals to wait until the 11th hour to maximize return on the players they are willing to trade?
Yes, I think it's good. The thing that Buster Olney pointed out in his column is one executive saying the issue is so many of these players who are available are free agent starters, and therefore the return may not be what some of the sellers anticipated. So you might have a number of teams clamoring, but you might not necessarily have the return you expect, at least as of right now, per Buster Olney. But I like the fact that the Cardinals are holding on for the next few days. But if the Cardinals don't, unless I just don't even think it's possible that they don't do anything between now and the trade deadline, I'm anxious to see it. I can't wait to see it. I think it is an important part for the Cardinal journey to turn the page, and I am anxious to see just how much they turn the page between now and August 1st at 5 p.m. Question 2. Thank you, Angry Beaver.
You betcha. What do you make about Sean Payton's comments about the former regime? Do you think those are unnecessary shots? They had Jets, a lineman, say that, I believe, effing bum is how he described Sean Payton.
He wasn't happy with the criticism of Nathaniel Hackett.
Yeah, it's just, it struck me as kind of like do we really maybe we just kind of move on. We don't necessarily need to take the unnecessary shots.
So you did not like it, is what I'm...
I just think I think it's bad practice. I think it's bad practice.
Would I do it? Absolutely not. It's just not the way... And here's my reasoning. Not because I'm on moral high ground. As you know, I'm a godless heathen.
Yeah.
Some say pervert, and I agree.
Yeah.
And I actually agree with that. But here's how it's kind of like likes and mentions. Not worth the time. I have other things to do than attack people in the media.
Right.
What do I get out of that? Especially, it's one thing if you're hanging on in your career and just trying to get attention. But Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl. God only knows how much money he has in the bank. It struck me as really odd. Here is my theory. If there was a method to that interview, he is trying to do everything he can to put Russell Wilson in the mindset that what took place last year had nothing to do with him, and it was everybody else, and especially that head coach who lost his job. That's why you didn't have success last year, and I'm so confident about it, I'm going to take all of the attention and call it the worst coaching job in NFL history, and that there are 20 hands that are dirty on Russell Wilson's 2022 season. That is my theory, because I just don't think a guy who's done it and won a Super Bowl and done it at the level and the length of time Sean Payton has would go off half-cocked like a guy trying to get attention at SEC media days. You know what I mean?
See, Tim, this is why the advertising. This is why we get the ROI. It's
why Angry Beaver's on board.
That right there is a prime example of critical thought analysis. Something I didn't consider.
Again, Jesuit educated, and there's so much. Thank you, St. Ignatius.
Yeah, that was really good. I really enjoyed that. Thank you for that. And also, it's great.
My read right now is you don't have anything else.
No, I do.
I know. I'm surprised because I figured, we've only gone to 2 chambers of the 6-shooter.
No doubt.
But maybe they're you think Wynn's going to be up?
I still have that one if you want to answer. The Sean Payton, and I get that, and I think that's a good call on him, essentially falling on the sword, give me all the onus.
Because he's just not some rookie head coach who's oh, good, I get to sound off, and it's just not the way that you just get to a point where you're I don't need this nonsense.
Right.
But therefore, I think it was strategic.
Right.
Otherwise, he has lost it, and I'll take the under on the Broncos win total.
I'm taking it because Russ can't scramble like he used to, and that was his saving.
We got a Broncos breakdown here.
Well, I went to it seems like they always played the Seahawks on Monday night, the Rams did, and somehow would win some of those games, but Russell Wilson was so effective.
The Rams hosted the Seahawks on Monday night in St. Louis a bunch?
I feel like at least twice.
Really? Is that right?
I feel like there was
surprised they were on Monday Night Football.
It was there was one that was a Monday night. I think that was the game where the gentleman maybe it was Golden Tate, waved goodbye after Janoris Jenkins got burned, which was became a theme towards the end of Janoris Jenkins' tenure with the Rams. But Russell Wilson was so good because he could scramble out of problems and create action. And if he doesn't have his legs anymore, it's going to be difficult. But high knees in the plane should fix it. All right, I got another question.
Hold on a second. I got a text here.
Oh, please.
Gets his segment sponsored, then mails in the segment. Classic Ledoux. That's from the 636. What a great text. Do we have any tickets to give?
No, and I wouldn't give him even a shred of a ticket. I am mailing anything.
Nice.
Dork. All right. Well, listen. And I think you'll know that by this question right here.
Okay.
If the aliens come down here and ask to see what this American sports deal is all about,
let's give them another set of tickets.
What is the one game you would show them to prove that we are a worthy species? Hold on. Back it up.
God.
Beep, beep, beep. Rewind. No one heard that.
Oh, wow.
Back it up.
314-399-9646. How's the YouTube chat going?
What is the one game you would show them to prove that we are a worthy species and they shouldn't probe us? I was going to say something else, but I avoided.
What in the hell?
Yeah, what's the one game you would show
Did
the
you
aliens?
just make that up on the fly?
Absolutely
I feel like
not.
I'm in Second City.
Ever since this UFO hearing, I've had this one in the chamber.
Wow. What a payoff. The one sport contest we would show so they don't anally probe us? I mean, is that what I'm being asked?
Yeah.
In a sponsored segment on a legitimate FM outlet, not our HD2 janitorial closet.
Well, when you paint it that way.
Right. How about the Miracle on Ice?
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's not a bad
hockey
one.
game.
There's a lot of context in that
I
one.
assume you'd go for a summer league game.
No, there's a lot of context in the one you were just alluding to. I think you could show them Game 6 of the 2011 World Series, and that would fire them up because there's right there is it's right on the surface. You know what I'm talking about. The Miracle on Ice game, there's a lot going into that you'd have to explain to the aliens, and I'm not so sure they're boned up on their Cold War knowledge.
Sure.
But I don't know. I guess we could have the guy.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming there's a basketball game you'd like to show them.
I don't know. There's not. Maybe
Missouri, Kansas, 2012.
Was it would have been in Game 6 of the 2014 or 13 NBA Finals when Ray Allen hit the shot.
Oh, Shuttlesworth.
Yeah.
That was 2013.
Bosh out to Allen. God bless America. It's time. This is this is a week of me doing broadcasting, and I'm gassed. Someone call in Jojo Romero. I need some relief. I don't have it.
Let me tell you something. They are not happy in the Air Comfort Service text.
That's like Pavlov's dog for me to get upset is when I hear they are not happy in the Air Comfort Service.
Good question, Piddles. That's from the 314.
That's a good one. I actually like that one. Listen, I mean, sometimes
tell the aliens about how far you hit your 7-iron. That's from the 636.
Do you think they'd be impressed with the $150? Maybe I would show them Tiger in 2000 at Pebble. That's what I'd show them.
Okay.
That would be impressive. They'd be like, all right, we'll probe everyone
but him. I assume Angry Beaver's canceling, honestly. That's what I think. That's my takeaway from this.
I think people are going to be heading down to the ballpark to see Cardinals and Cubs. They're going to go by Angry Beaver. They're going to say Piddles, and they're going to get $5 off any pizza. And then they'll be like, worth every penny.
I see on MLB Network, Bob Nightingale tweets are being highlighted as we speak. The odds Nolan Arenado would waive his trade clause to go to the Dodgers, 100%. The odds the Cardinals would trade Arenado to the Dodgers, 1%. And then another tweet just was shown is the Texas Rangers are aggressively pursuing Jordan Hicks. So that just on the MLB Network. I'm sure BK and Ferrario will have more coming up. Time to shut it down. Hate to do it because I feel like we're kind of firing on all cylinders.
I was really I was hitting my peak.
Yeah. Bad break. But it's time for us to shut it down. BK and Ferrario are up next for Action Jackson. I'm Tim McKernan. This has been Balloon Party, driven by Mungan S. St. Louis Acura and Alton Toyota on 101 ESPN.